Today, I wanted to talk about my digital camera collection. As a photographer, I have always been under the firm opinion that a photographer should have at least two different types of cameras. When I started out as a 35mm photographer, that was a very big expense, especially since I was basically running on an allowance. But the fact of the matter is, during the digital era, I've had the opportunity to have at least two, or on occasion three, functional cameras at any given time, each that serve a very important and different function for me. And I consider my training on 35mm, such as on the Pentax K1000 or the Pentax P30T, to be, well, essentially training grounds, a photography university. I studied all by myself through John Hedgego's photography book, and learn about photography, calculating exposure that way. And since digital cameras are primarily automatic, I decided that the function of the camera would be based on quality and composition as far as I was concerned. So, today we are going to be talking about my different digital cameras that I have had over the years. And let's start from the very beginning. My odyssey with digital photography began during the holiday season of 2004. My ex and I were at Target, and he actually got me a digital camera that also took videos and recorded brief audio excerpts. It was actually a camcorder. It was a 4-megapixel device, and it was over $120, and it was a Aptec DV4500. It had a tiny little lens, looked like a pinhole, and the camera was boxy, very much shaped like a Walkman, but it taught me the basics of digital photography. The image quality of it was, let's just say, very subpar compared to what you would get later. It is the only digital camera I've ever had that I don't personally have access to, because what happened was, 3 years after I bought it, just randomly using it one day, I had a case for it and took really good care of it, the camera simply crumbled in my hands. It was made of the cheapest possible plastic, and is really not that far removed from a children's toy, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't believe that Aptec actually has continued to manufacture the DV series of digital cameras any longer. You may find some on Amazon.com, including that one. But there was another digital camera in my future that really opened me up to a lot of photographic possibilities. This is the earliest digital camera that I personally have access to. I got this at the defunct Circuit City, and it is an Olympus E500. This is what is known as a DSLR, a digital single lens reflex camera, which means that what you see through the viewfinder here is what you see through the lens here. Now, one feature about this camera, this is simply an E500, nothing more. There's others in the E500 line. When you turn the camera on, you get a logo, but there's absolutely no visualization screen here, just technical information. You literally have to look through this lens to see anything. Now, this particular camera is 8 megapixels and has a number of settings here: close-up, macro, landscape, action, night, and portrait, and there's a number of scene selections and a manual selection as well. It has a lot of modes. Now, the fact of the matter is, unless I adjust the exposure compensation on this camera now, I have trouble taking pictures in bright sunlight, and everything looks a little bit overexposed. I have a feeling the sensor needs to be washed off. But if I use it even in that proper manner, I find it to be a good, solid, reliable camera. However, at 8 megapixels, if I want to crop anything, these days, with the way computers are designed, you start seeing some slight lack of image quality the further you crop it, even with this pretty good, for the time, telephoto lens. This camera actually came with this strap and these two lenses. This is a wide-angle telephoto, which I used for a long time. I could do some good close-ups, and this long-range telephoto. Let me show you the front of this camera. I just got this at the Portland photo market. Its original cover has long since been missing. It's a really nice camera. It's actually one of my favorite cameras I've ever had, and certainly my favorite digital camera. I'm not really willing to give it up. I think it's a pretty good unit. DSLRs, Olympus, or the Canon Rebels or the Canon EOS in 35mm format, even in digital format, were far, far, far outside of my price range. I mean, even today, this is, but at the time I got lucky. There was a financial stipend. I'm not going to get into that, but I decided either a computer or a camera. I picked this. Best choice of my life. It has a pop-up flash here, too, but I hardly ever use that. I like natural light better, personally, but that is my first and up until recently only DSLR camera that I ever had. Remember when I mentioned a little bit earlier about having a couple cameras? Well, this is a good example of the sort of second camera I was looking for. And what happened was, about 5 years ago, I was at a local second-hand electronics DVD, CD store, which just recently closed, called Edge Video. And sometimes I noticed they sold cameras there, but they were usually, you know, old Rite Aid models from 2002 that were 1.3 megapixels, you know, even for digital cameras, pretty much garbage. But one day I found this there, and it was $40. I had more than enough of the money, and it was fairly new at the time. This is a Sanyo, it's a little point and shooter, S770 3x optical zoom camera. Now, this camera has nothing for zoom, but it still has all this information on the front. ISO 1000, 7.1 megapixels. It's actually quite a lot better than that camera that I had in 2004, the Ape Tech. Now, this camera was originally made in 2007. It takes AA batteries and SD memory cards, probably designed primarily for 1 and 2 gigabytes, so this is the small megapixels. The picture quality on this camera absolutely blows away any small digital camera I had before, a 35mm camera. While, you know, unlike the more posh look of the E500 Olympus, it maintains somewhat more of a natural filmic kind of quality that you might get on 35mm without the, you know, grainy picture. But, you know, this I primarily use where I use the Olympus for close-ups and more professional shots. I use this as a camera on the go. It took really solid, reliable pictures. And that little device up there, it looks like a little square mirror. That's actually to take your own selfies, I suppose they call them now. It's a mirror to try to get yourself in the portrait, and it's in conjoined right with the lens. That's a really unique feature. I'll show you. Turn it on. Show you how it works. There's the lens. That's the date feature. The date feature automatically defaults if you... There's the view screen there. There's the zoom. Like I said, it's not much of a zoom. Makes a lot of noise. I don't use this camera anymore because of something that happened at the end of 2013, which completely changed my perspective on small digital cameras. I decided to move up from this camera to this camera. This camera was a Christmas gift for me this past year in 2013, and it's a Sony Cybershot 16 megapixel camera with an 8x optical zoom. That beats out the 3x optical zoom, doesn't it? Now, this camera may appear to have a tiny flash, but it packs a lot of power. And it has a Carl Zeiss lens, a really good quality lens. And what happened was that I got this particular camera during an ice storm. And that was my first test to actually see it function. There was ice hanging off the trees and they were bearing down. Now, this camera is a model DSC W730 optical steady shot. Now let's turn this camera on. As you can see, I'm going to try to test the zoom function here for you. It's an LED camera. I can't really do much for it. But I might as well let you know that this particular camera is the one that I've been doing all of the videos for these other cameras with so far, and a lot of my other videos recently. And there was also another funny incident that happened earlier in 2014. Not really an incident, but just something I went and saw rummaging through another store that I decided to go for, just for a pure piece of nostalgia. The camera you're seeing here now is an HP Photosmart M407. I found it for $1.99 at a place called the Hands of Hope Pawn Shop, which is next to the local Kmart. Well, Hands of Hope second hand shop. It's kind of like Salvation Army. And this camera was made roughly around the same time as my first Aptec. It's a 4.1 megapixel with an 18x zoom, which is really fantastic for a camera of this age. And it doesn't take the greatest of images because of its really tiny lens, but they said that if it, and you know, it has a regular viewfinder here, because 35mm cameras were still pretty common in 2004. But they wanted me to test it to see if it actually worked, using some 91% alcohol to clean off the battery heads. Sure enough, it works. But you have to do a little finagling to get an image on the back. Now let's see about that zoom, shall we? As you can see, it's pretty long, even for a camera of that sort. It's a standard focusing. It has flash features. I don't really use it that much. It takes SD cards. It's a pretty good, solid, reliable camera, but I only got this primarily for nostalgia, so that's part of my digital camera collection. I may use it for certain types of shots. Again, it has that kind of, 35mm kind of look to it, if that's what you like for a digital camera from about 10 years ago. This is probably the second most expensive camera I ever got. It almost cost me $300, to be totally honest with you. I got it at the Portland Photomarket, and it is a Nikon Coolpix L820 model. It's actually last year's model, and I didn't mind that so much because I was looking around for another DSLR to kind of supplement my older one that had 16 megapixel image power, and this little burgundy baby does. Now, it's a bridge camera, as you can see from this, contour to fit the human hand, and it does that job very well. It's got the flash on top of here. A lot of people have been getting these cameras now. It has full HD, 1080D HD quality, but if you turn the camera on, I can show you one great feature about it right now. Sorry for the strap getting in the way of that. That feature is this. It's got a 30x zoom on it. That's a very impressive feature. I can't really show it to you in this video because of the angle of shot, but it has an amazing zoom capacity. And the image quality is probably the best of any cameras I've ever had. Look at that lens size. Just like my Olympus camera. Really amazing lens. And it's a Nikon lens, which is a really good quality lens. So there you have it. That's my collection of digital cameras. Since I'm using that Coolpix, actually the Cybershot, to take these, I'm going to gather them all together as best I can to show you what I've got for digital cameras here. Together. Here are 4 of my digital cameras. I'm using this still. I still use that one because I love that camera. I don't use this so much anymore. I may give it to a family member, and that's mostly just for nostalgia. And you've seen, again, the blue Cybershot that I've been using for this video. So that's what I take pictures with, and these are what I take videos with, and this is my window to the photographic and video world. I hope you all enjoyed. All of you photographers, keep taking your pictures, and everybody else out there, see you next time.